All right, I'm going to do the best I can and teach section 5.5 here remotely. I am going to split it up into like two lessons. Um, the first day of this will be the hard day. It'll be have the more bulk of the information. All right. Essentially, think of 5.5 as taking almost everything we've done all year and now combining it all into one. And so this says learn. This is really should say remember. If we're looking at the answers, and really all I need you to remember here is the places where it crosses the x-axis. Those are the real solutions or roots or zeros. And so we can tell right here this has two real answers around -6 and +3. All right. Could it have potentially more answers if they were imaginary? Sure. Sure. We'll get into that. But right now, we know it has those two ones for sure. Okay. And this is something that they are saying is brand new. We've talked about as a class. And so I think a lot of you guys understand is the fundamental theory of algebra. If it's x to the third, then it has three roots or three answers. X to the fourth, four roots or four answers. X to the fifth. And we've been over that. I think a lot of you are already good at that. And so the first kind of thing we're going to talk about here, I'm going to show you this first example here. And I left the work up here for you from the book. And then I'll walk you through the next one. When I go to solve this, first thing I always do, is there a greatest common factor? Is there something I can factor out? Yep, x squared goes into both things. Pull the x squared out front. X squared times x squared makes x to the fourth. X squared times 49 makes 49x squared. And then if you set x squared equals to 0, you would square root. Plus minus 0 isn't really a thing. And so we know that represents two answers. All right, it's from an x squared. Then over here, they subtracted 49 and square rooted. Remember, negative always becomes an I. Square root of 49 is just 7. And so plus minus 7i. All right, and so the answers are just 0 and plus minus 7i. Those are the answers. It says state the number and types of roots. That's two real and two imaginary roots. So that's what they mean by that. They're want you to go take the extra step to process that you understand that there are some imaginary answers. And so I get this one, and, first thing I ask is there greatest common factor? No, 1 is 1, so it's going to be the lowest it can go. Some of you might think it factors, and it's good to try it, 2x and 2x and 1 and 1, but that would cancel out that -4x in the middle, so that doesn't work either. And so what tools do I have in the toolbox to solve this? And some of you are going to be very grateful that I'm sick right now because I can't sing it. But this is where you would do -b plus minus square root b squared minus 4ac, all divided by 2a. All right. And so, a here is 4. B here is -4. C here is -1. And so I'm going to plug those in. -4. Excuse me. Plus minus square root. -4 squared minus 4 times 4 times -1. All over 2a, which is 4. And so that just makes positive 4 plus minus 16 plus 16 over 8, which is 4 plus minus root 32 over 8. And just for the sake of making sure we practice it, I'm going to go over here, root 32. All right, root 32, I want to do 2 times 16. And 16, I'm going to do 4 times 4. And again, I could break the 4s down, but anytime I get a pair, all right, I want to say that they can get out of jail. So 4 is out of jail now. 2 is left inside. And so 4 root 2. And so I want to make this 4 plus minus 4 root 2 over 8. And then you can break it down. 4 goes into all those numbers, those integers. Remember, not worry about inside the square root sign, just the integers They're not in square root signs. 4 goes in all of them, so it becomes 1 plus minus root 2, or 1 root 2 over 2. And that's my answer. And then that's just 2 real roots. And I feel like I went fast there. It's a good thing this is a video, and you can rewind it. But I'll leave the work there and shut up for a second so you can look at the screen before I go on to the next thing. Again, I would start with, is there a greatest common factor? No greatest common factor. All right, so can I factor it in any other way? Is there's two parts here? Is it a perfect square or a perfect sum or difference of cubes? Well, it's not cubes, it's a fourth. Is a perfect square? Yeah, x squared makes x to the fourth, and 9 squared makes 81. So this becomes x squared and x squared, 9 and 9, because x squared times x squared makes x to the fourth, and 9 times 9 makes 81, and 1's plus, 1's minus. And now I'm just going to set them individually equal to 0. I have minus 9 on both sides here. I square root both sides. I get x equals plus minus 3i. I add 9 on both sides. I square root. I get x equals plus minus 3. And so I have that answer and that answer. It's 2 real and 2 imaginary. Multiplicity. Multiplicity just means the number can have more than once. We saw that with the first one, where it's x squared equals 0. Remember, when you're looking at a graph, all right, I should probably not draw it in black here. Hold on, let me get rid of that one. All right. When you're looking at a graph, if wherever, it doesn't matter what the graph looks like. Here, where it crosses the axis. If it crosses like it's straight through a line, that means it happens once. All right. A multiplicity of 1. If we're, it was to go up and zigzag, we can't see it, but then it comes down here, it just barely touches at the bottom of a U shape. All right. That's a multiplicity of 2. All right. And then that hiccup, I call it, from a cubic, that's a multiplicity of 3. And so you might get 2 of them in the same graph. It might be a graph where, it goes up, it comes down, and it goes here, and then it goes like that. And so let's say this graph says the problem says this is an x to the 5th graph. All right. Well, I know I got one answer right there. That's one of my answers, whatever that number is. That's 2 of my answers. All right. 2 or 2 and 3, you can think of that. 2 answers. All right. And so I have 3 total answers there. So that means 2 of my answers would be imaginary. The next slide is going to talk about conjugates. Conjugates just simply means, all this means is a way fancy word, meaning that imaginaries always come in pairs. So like if it's 3 plus 2i is one of the answers, then automatically 3 minus 2i is also one of the answers. Or if you just think of 4i, then negative 4i is also one of the answers. All right, they always come in pairs. I answers or imaginary answers always come in pairs. All right. So you could group these because x squared goes in the first 2, but over here you can't make it so it would match. So you could try grouping. It wouldn't, obviously greatest common factor doesn't work here. All right. So what am I left with? We have no tools in the toolbox left to deal with this, except for the calculator tool. And so the first step, when you can't go greatest common factor, you can't split it in half and group it. The first step is just to type it into the graphing calculator or Desmos. All right. Type into graph calculator decimals and see if you can get an answer or 2 or 3 or whatever you can get. And so the Desmos I screen capture and transfer into the slideshow here doesn't, usually you can click right there and it'll say the answer. And this one will say it's 3. My slideshow doesn't show it, but it would say that's 3. So I know x equals 3 is one of the answers. It has a multiplicity of 1. It's going straight through it. And also, it's the only one, it's the only answer. It's real, so the other one should be imaginary. So I'm going to go back, and I know 3 is an answer. So I'm going to put 3 into the box and do synthetic substitution. One drops down. 1 times 3 is 3. Those add up to 4. Add the column times by the box. 4 times 3 is 12. Add the column. Those add up to 5. Times by the box, 15. I knew my remainder was going to be 0 because I knew it was a solution. Right? And so this leaves me with x squared plus 4x plus 5, which if that factored, I would have seen solutions in the graph. So I know it doesn't factor. And so I'm going to go right to x equals negative b plus minus square root b squared minus 4ac all over 2a, which is negative 4 plus minus. And I have 16 minus 20 all underneath the square root. And that's 2. And I'm going to scroll up here a little bit and maybe extend that down. All right. And then I have negative 4 plus minus the square root of negative 4 all over 2. Now, you know the square root of 4 is 2. It's negative, so it's 2i. And so my final answer here, is negative 2 plus or minus I. And so that is the answer. And don't forget, you also had x equals 3. And so I guess it's all of this is the answer. 1 real, 2 imaginary. One last example for today. Crazy problem here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 parts. 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. No placeholders. No greatest common factor. It's odd number of things, so I can't do grouping. All right. And so the only thing I got to do is take it and plug into a calculator. All right. And so, again, this doesn't transfer the best when I copy it over from Desmos. But that would be negative 4, and this would be positive 7. And so I'm just going to write those answers over here on the top. From the graph, we know from the graph, all right? This is from the graph. We know x equals negative 4 and x equals 7. It does not matter which one of those you start with. I'm going to start with negative 4, but you could start with 7. So negative 4 goes in the box. And then I go 1, negative 3, negative 3, negative 75, negative 700. 1 drops straight down, times by the box, add, times by the box, add, times by the box, it should be, negative 100, add, times by the box, add. All right. And again, you could have done it with 7. I did it with negative 4. All right. Now, there was 2 answers we knew of. I plugged in, I did synthetic with the original coefficients. Got this. That's still not small enough. That's x to the third now. We'll start x to the fourth. That's x to the third now. I need to get ready to do my quadratic formula or something. I need x squared. And so I'm going to plug in 7, but I want to use those coefficients that were the answer I just got. So I use this answer in my other synthetic substitution. 1 drops straight down. Times by the box, add. Times by the box, add. So I'm left with x squared plus 25 equals 0. This is, if you think of it this way, this is the first thing, so it's no x at all, x to the first, x to the second. Or we went down from forward, this will be x to the third, this will now be x to the second. And then I would just minus 25 to both sides, square root, and you get x equals plus minus 5i. Don't forget you already had negative 4 and 7. So 2 real, 2 imaginary, and those are your answers. Right. For your assignment with this, we're going to separate it out here. So those last 41 throughs, that's what we'll do tomorrow. So try to do that first half today. Best of luck. I should be available more by email.